So, folks, after a natural disaster like Hurricane Melissa, property boundaries are most likely to be off, and a land surveyor is needed to re-establish the lines. The President, Timothy Thwaites, and Vice President Karsten Johnson of the Land Surveyors Association of Jamaica join me now to discuss their important role in rebuilding our country. Good morning to you both. Welcome.
Morning, Neville. Thanks for having us.
I hope that if you guys had family down there, they're all right.
Well, we're grateful for those of us in Kingston. Everybody has connections in them country, in Jamaica. We have colleagues who have been affected, and our thoughts and prayers go to everyone around Jamaica who's been affected by the effects of Melissa.
On a normal circumstance, how is a house boundary or the boundary lines of a building? How is that determined normally?
Surveyors generally, Neville, we're like detectives out in the field. We use evidence. We gather evidence of occupation, evidence of pre-existing surveys to help identify and determine where your property starts, your neighbor's property ends. That can include documents, old marks on the ground, where your fences are. So we're basically data gatherers that assess that data and figure out where one property starts, one property ends.
But how is that decided in the first place?
Usually through agreement of you and your neighbor. People have to live good. That's actually our starting point. Natural features, other things on ground that are present when the surveyor comes. We do what we call adjudicate a boundary, and then that determines, and we record it by our surveys to then go forward as the boundary of a piece of property.
So, Karsten, if I buy what do you call it, lot, plot, whatever you want to call it, I would know then that it is 10 by 10 or 40 by 50 or whatever. I would know then, and do I have to measure it myself and say, well, this is where it stops and starts?
Well, if you were measuring it yourself, Neville, we wouldn't have any work. But we have references. Each lot will be defined by the references, by the dimensions that we have adjudicated in the first place and recorded. So we will be able to reestablish based on the information that we have stored and references that we have on deposited plans, on your title, and be able to say, this is where your 10 by 20 or whatever the case may be is located, or where the boundary lines are, so that you can know exactly where your plot should be.
So if that is so certain, why I need you now? I mean, I remember where my house was and where the lines were.
Memory can be grey and fluid, and fleeting, especially in the traumatic period after disaster. So what we do as surveyors, Neville, in this situation is we go out and we have to pick up the pieces of evidence, the remnant evidence, and help to ensure that the boundaries you put back together, that you rebuild following the disaster, are consistent with any sort of interest or property boundaries that existed before. Now, with clearly the significant effect of the storm, that may take a little more work, but surveyors, it's one of the reasons why the work we do initially is so thorough and so detailed, because Melissa is one possible thing, but there are many reasons why boundary evidence can be lost, misplaced, and the work of the surveyor going back in afterwards is to pick up those pieces, assess it all, and to be able to confidently relocate your boundary to where it was before.
But you would have to know what obtained before.
Correct, and that's why a large part of surveying is record keeping.
There is,
our land property system relies heavily on recording plans, and the National Land Agency keeps a repository, or is a repository of those things. So we would have to gather that data, use our field measurements, correlate everything, and then we're able to determine where.
So, Karsten, go back to my 10 by 20 lot now.
Yes.
So if it end up 10 by 21, we're going to fight over that, right? Was it 10 by 21 or 10 by 19? Just move on?
That any fight like that, as long as it's within, we have a system of general agreement where there's some tolerance, and if it's beyond that, then there is an issue. We call it.
You can live with 10 by 21, but you can't live with 10 by 25.
Well, I can say off the top of my head, maybe not, especially if it's in meters.
No, and
25 will be probably outside of our allowance for general agreement.
Yeah, and there are processes. When boundaries are not hard and fast forever, there are processes to update records if you and your neighbor can agree that this is a change that we want to accommodate. So surveyors are specifically trained to handle any of these scenarios as long as we are guided by our clients and those interested to do so.
All right, let's get specific now, Sir Tim. What happens now? All right, so You're going down in the rural area because I call you and I say, well, I don't know where my boundaries. What you don't know? Get specific with.
We hope that you had your survey diagram or your land title well preserved through the storm.
All right, hold on. No, I'll lose that.
That's gone. Well, we rely then on the records in the National Land Agency, and we try our best to retrieve those records, then come on the ground and take our measurements to help you relocate the extents of your property.
Yeah. We've had this discussion, maybe even this argument for years, that one of the reasons some of these things happen, obviously we can't plan hurricane, but one of the reasons because we're building in the wrong places, we're doing the wrong thing. Do you advise on that too? So I call you down into one of the affected areas and say, boy, I didn't sort out my boundary. Do you look at me and say, well, maybe it's not here you should be building in the first place?
We can give advice.
You can, but you don't?
No, it's not that we do. But what we know is that our measurements of physical space are only one component of a suite of assessments and professional inputs that are required to determine whether one place is safe or when it's not. Our specialty as surveyors is measurement. And those measurements form the bedrock, the foundation of many engineering and geological assessments that can bring us closer to that decision making as to whether somewhere is safe or where it's not. And I think there's going to be a huge demand for that now as we reflect on the effects of Melissa, and the work of surveys is going to be very important in feeding into these processes of determining where we rebuild and where we build now going forward, to make sure that we're sustainable and resilient in our future, and that a lot of the things that we've seen don't recur.
So, Karsten, are you suggesting that if you come to help me get my lines and you know I shouldn't be there, you're not going to tell me that I shouldn't be there?
No, as I said, as the President just said, we'll advise based on our findings of, what...
But you're not going to... You will assist, but you're not going to insist, is what you say.
Yes, I mean, it's your property.
Okay.
It's your property, and how you deal with the advice will be up to you.
We've heard of content. Rising water. I'm not certain if that's the only area in Jamaica that this happens. How difficult would that be now? Or it's just the same as anywhere else?
So content is a very interesting natural phenomenon of groundwater, which primarily, Neville, is a hydrological, geological occurrence. Now, we come into play because, assessing that situation is going to require understanding where water is coming from, where it's going, and a lot of that is guided by the terrain, the topography of land. And that's where our speciality comes in. We can do large-scale modeling, mapping, create what we call digital elevation models, contour plans that can, all kind of 3D representations of the area to help guide and instruct those who are assessing whether, what the future looks like for an area like content, which is not the only one. There's groundwater influencing many places. And so our role is modeling that physical space.
Can you do anything while the water is up, or you have to go wait?
If we get adventurous enough, surveyors are able to, be amphibious. We can work in the water, though that's very dangerous with some of the other things. So the timing of what we do will, and when it's needed, will determine what instrumentation we use, things like that. But surveyors are trailblazing professionals. When we're called, whether it's wet, dry, high or low, we're going to be there.
Yeah. By the way, maybe I should have asked you this at the top. Who calls you? Is it a government agency say, boy, you need to go into Westmoreland because we don't know what's going on? Or is me who own the house and notice, say, Mr. Twaits next door, I try going him did closer to me, then who calls you?
The answer is all, probably. Can be the client, can be a government agency, attorneys, realtor. Anyone can call us to assist with a matter we're involved in property. So,
and whoever call you, pay you?
Well, that is a key question that we have to figure out at the beginning.
Well, can you figure it out now?
Well, there's going to be a lot of resources put towards recovery. And I know our members, we are already primed. Surveyors are very generous in the normal case, Neville. We help a lot of people to advance and get things done. But we know that as VP Johnson said, there are going to be a lot of needs for our various services that will help the rebuild and resilience process going forward.
Final question, Mr. President. What tips, if any, can you suggest to property owners to action now?
As it relates to property, property requires you to secure your assets. So if you have property that's not where you live, ensure you visit, ensure that you secure and have a presence at your piece of property. The second piece of advice that we always give from our perspective at the association level is that as we rebuild, we know the world we live in. There will be people trying to take advantage of disaster, and we encourage everyone to come to licensed professionals so that we can give proper, thoughtful advice and help. What you don't want to do is make a mistake and make a bad situation worse. And the Land Surveyors Association is here. Its members are here to help Jamaica and all our countrymen in the rebuild following this terrible natural disaster. How big is your association, by the way? Our association has over 100, I think nearly 120 full members and a lot of associate members coming through the ranks. And so we're here and geared up and ready to help.
And 100 years in 2 years' time.
I did say final question. Have you been called yet?
We are mobilized and doing work.
Okay.
We don't have the privilege of waiting. Jamaica needs us.
Great. Congrats. Good to see you both. And on behalf of who you're helping, congratulations. He's the President, Timothy Thwaites, and Vice President Karsten Johnson, and they're both from the Land Surveyors Association of Jamaica. All right, folks, still to come. Flavor the holiday with Benjamins. But before that, the second edition of News in 5 comes up now. Stay with us, please. Soon come.